Good morning, everyone, and welcome to join our Auntie open webinar on this sunny Thursday in Helsinki. My name is Mikael, and I'll be the host here. So before we start with the actual presentation with our lovely expert, Mareke Bruns, who is also our Auntie expert, just a few details about attending the webinar. Your microphones are automatically muted. If you have any thoughts or ideas that you want to share with all of the listeners here, you are welcome to do so via the chat functionality. And if you want to leave us questions that we might be going through at the end of the presentation, please use the private chat functionality for those ones. Our topic for today is psychological safety at the workplace. And like I already said, our presentation will be conducted by our lovely Auntie expert, Mareke Bruns. And we have 30 minutes to spare for this presentation, and being mindful of the time, I'll give the stage to you, Mareke. So stage is yours, take it away.
Thank you so much, Mikael, for the introduction. Welcome also from my part. I am thrilled to be looking at this very important topic with you, psychological safety at the workplace. So let's get started. We'll be looking at 4 different topics today. We start with the 4 dimensions of psychological safety, so a bit of base work. Then we look at the risk and possibilities. And we also want to look at how can I apply principles to improve psychological safety in the workplace. And then at the end, like Mikael said, we will have time for questions and comments. A little bit about myself. I am an occupational therapist and mental health specialist and an Auntie professional since 2021. And since we're talking about mental health and mental well-being, I wanted to share with you that I enjoy gardening and cycling, and that is something that really keeps me well. I'm sure you also have something that you enjoy doing to stay well. So how do we start with a topic like this? You might have come across some of these bullet points. I'm just picking out some. Gossiping, bullying, facing consequences as a result of having done a mistake in your team, maybe. You've maybe also heard people talking badly about each other behind each other's back. And you may have also experienced some of these yourself or have observed them in your wider or closer working environment. Why are these things happening, and what is it supported by? When we see such behavior, most likely there's not such good psychological safety in the workplace. People do not feel safe to speak their mind, share their opinion, give feedback without fearing that something negative will happen as a consequence. And that, of course, in itself has a negative dynamic for the team, for the individual person. And when this atmosphere of mistrust or mistrust mainly comes about, then it is important to take action in one way or another to try to eliminate these factors that do not help people feeling safe and psychological safely, mainly in the workplace. So these are indicators that something is not right with the psychological safety in the workplace. And unfortunately, we do hear a lot about different examples like these. But on the contrast, if we do this little exercise, can you think of a situation in the past month where you actually felt comfortable addressing your own opinions in your workplace? Maybe you can especially think about the key factors that have enabled you to, for example, give feedback or talk about something difficult. Maybe just for half a minute or so, I would like you to think about an example just for yourself. Okay. I hope you could all think of a scenario maybe, or an interaction with someone that made you feel comfortable to voice your opinions. Because it is paying attention to those factors that enable you to speak freely and safely that will also counter-interact with examples that we've seen on the previous slide for facilitating or for experiencing an environment that is not good for people's psychological safety. So remember maybe one scenario from your experience. What did the other person do to make you feel comfortable in addressing your opinions? Now, what is psychological safety in teams exactly? I'm sure some of you have heard about it. Amy Edmondson has given us this quote: "The belief that the work context is safe for interpersonal risk-taking, that speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes will be welcomed and valued." So there is a common belief, an agreement, something that you can be sure of with your teammates, that whatever criticism, questions, some people say, oh, I have a stupid question. No, maybe there are no stupid questions. Every questions are welcomed, and you should never feel like you are being a fool or taking someone's time. Psychological safety is characterized by an atmosphere where there is room for sharing the good things, but also sharing things that are not so easy maybe to address. And the interesting part behind it is observing teams that experience psychological safety and maybe teams that do not experience psychological safety. Because the essence here is that with psychological safety, people can actually focus on their work, on their goals, on their creative thinking. They can mobilize energy to really work on what's important, the tasks and the goals that they're set out to achieve, instead of self-protecting oneself from this feeling of bullying or the impression that I cannot speak openly because I might be threatened to lose my position, to experience problems, to get into conflicts that I cannot manage well, or that I have a disadvantage. So in these kind of work environments, people are preoccupied with saving themselves and protecting themselves, and then that contains a lot of energy, or that it uses a lot of energy that cannot be used for the actual work. And that is maybe also something to remember. And you might feel that also from own experience. When you're in an unsafe environment, that's where your energy might go. So we said we want to look at the 4 dimensions that make up psychological safety to understand a bit more what's actually behind this. So the first stage, and Mr. Clark said that it's basically building on each other. So we first need to feel included. Then we can learn. Once we have reached that stage, we can contribute. And then the last stage is the challenger stage. When we feel safe, being able to do all these things, we can challenge, because that's the most difficult part. But let's look at them in more detail. So what does inclusion safety actually mean? It means that I feel part of my team, that I feel that I can be myself around my colleagues. It means that I also know who my colleagues are out with work a little bit, So there is an interest in building trust and getting to know each other and spending time having a chat over coffee. It's not just work focused. And when we talk about mental well-being, it's also very important that I can actually open up about my stress levels, my workload, my well-being. I had a really difficult morning. The kids were running around. I was running late to get the bus. I arrived this morning super stressed, and I know I have a presentation to host in half an hour. Can I quickly, sit down with you and drink a coffee? It would help me to calm down. Or even if you're maybe very close with someone there in the office, could you give me a hug to support my stress release? So when someone feels they can actually open up about that, then it's an inclusive feeling that I am myself am accepted the way that I am with everything I bring to the work. When that feels quite good, it takes time, of course. Imagine you start new at a work and you might concentrate much more on the inclusion and the learner safety first. And then these other stages might come later on when you have built this trust. For example, the learner safety, you know this maybe from onboarding periods, from, especially the first month. I feel safe to talk about my mistakes, and I can ask and raise my hand. I'm not quite sure how this was supposed to be. Can you explain this again to me, please? You don't mind, and you're welcome to ask questions. You are encouraged to ask questions. You also feel confident when receiving feedback, because the feedback is meant for you to learn and to learn from mistakes and make it better. And you also feel confident about giving feedback to your other person that you're working with. So the climate for learning, and learning means basically learning from mistakes and not being so fast maybe, and taking time and having to incorporate all of these other things also going on that are new in a new working environment, that there is room for that. And then when you feel, I feel quite good, I feel quite safe, I feel I have a connection with my colleagues, I know what I'm doing, then you might also feel safer to contribute something of your expertise, because you have been asked to come to the workplace for certain reasons, most likely because you are an addition to the team or the needs that need to be met. So you feel safe to voice your ideas and your views and your opinions. And you also feel that people trust you. They want to hear your opinion. You feel that you are capable of doing your work. You're not micromanaged, that someone is like, do you really know what to do? And I think you should be doing this first. So it's all about feeling valued for the contribution that you are giving to the team, the employer. And then the fourth stage is that you actually feel safe to challenge something that you observe. You might challenge current ways of working. You might challenge behavior that you have observed. You might bring up difficult subjects. You might speak up about tension in the team. You might also challenge someone because they have not gotten back to you, or they've not met the deadline, or you've really observed something like we saw on the first slide, some bullying, some misconduct, something that really is not in line with the codes of conduct maybe. And you might also feel safe enough to challenge your team lead, your supervisor, all with the intention, and that's the idea of psychological safety, to drive something forward, to improve the situation, to make a positive impact. That's why it is important to have this psychological safety to be able to be creative and seek for solutions. And we can only seek for solutions if we know about the problems and if we discuss the problems openly. At least that has been found that is very, very helpful. When teams have this psychological safety, it's much easier to discuss difficult topics because they do not feel threatened personally. That is the reason for that. So let's look at the risk and possibilities of psychological safety. So again, what happens if we do not have psychological safety? And there I thought this, turning it a bit on the head and looking at this, the quote from Raphael Giunzi from the University of Toronto might be quite interesting. He has researched this topic, and he says there is a very powerful thought in knowing that I can talk in a safe space, that people are listening and considering my ideas, because then you bring out what really needs to be heard, like critical thinking, critical thoughts. If you do not feel that you can say things, then a lot of things, like we see in this yellow underlining sentence, will not be heard because people are afraid to speak up. And you might have experienced that yourself, that we just don't learn about all these thoughts that could potentially drive things forward because people are afraid to speak up. And that's why it is a risk when there is no psychological safety there are being established. So why do you think people do not seem like they can speak up? What researchers have found is that because I think no one wants to hear their ideas and no one asks. It might also be a lack of confidence or a lack of skills, or people think, and this is quite powerful, if I say something, it won't make a difference, nothing will happen anyway. So that are reasons why people are not speaking up, because mainly they don't feel valued, right? So again, something that has been found is that these ideas that are not shared will not improve the customer experience, even though they could. They will not improve the productivity or the process, and they will not increase the positive employee experience. So it's really worth a lot to invest into improving an atmosphere and environment where people do feel safe to speak up. Okay, so what have people shared with us in this Start Courageous Cultures about speaking up in a psychologically safe environment? They're standing up to their boss. They will give constructive feedback to someone who has maybe not performed so well. They are sharing honest information no one wanted to hear. They may be defending someone because they observed some not nice behavior. And they are the ones speaking up, arguing this very non-popular viewpoint no one wants to hear initially. So now I want to ask you, what is the most courageous act you have done in your career? If you want to think about that for half a minute. Okay. I'm sure I hope you all could think of an example. And here again, focus on what helped you to be courageous. Because often people are not courageous just by themselves, but because they are unable to be courageous by their environment. Yeah, and how did it make you feel afterwards? So again, why do we need psychological safety? We need it to learn, absolutely, to experiment and try to have this test phase. And we know also in many settings, in developing a new project, a new service, it is needed to have test runs to try what works and what does not. It's vital to share your thoughts and ideas, to make decisions, to show your own experience and actually show what you have learned, what you value as being needed to succeed in the next goal. Share your expertise, to cooperate, speaking with each other. It's much easier to talk with each other if we know that someone will listen without being judgmental. Same goes with addressing a problem and to actually solve problems. And these were findings by Amy Edmondson herself in her book, Fearless Organizations, where she has basically focused on why are we doing this? Why is it so important to pay attention to facilitate and foster psychological safety? And of course, there are many more reasons why it is important. So let's look at the third part of our presentation today. How do I apply some of these learnings into the practice? And here we have split between what everyone can do and what leadership can do. If we first look at some examples of what all of you can do, you can respect someone's different opinion, being tolerant about it. You can ask about feedback and encourage others to also comment. I want to learn. I want to hear what you think could be improved about my performance or about my way of working. I would love to be better at this. And to show that you're vulnerable. Show that you're not perfect. None of us is. And the power of vulnerability, some of you might also know Brené Brown, she has researched that topic a lot, is that when we feel vulnerable, we actually share a lot more about our learnings. And we also make it easier for us to connect with others to do the same. And then again, we come back to findings. What have we found in solving the problem? What things are not quite working? What do we need to improve? Maybe you feeling safer in this team. And it's again also this, we're having a solution-focused mindset. It's not about blaming someone about having done a mistake, which is something we see often, but that does not get us anywhere. It's more looking at, okay, this was a problem, understood. Let's look at what went wrong. And we all understand this to be a collaborative process. And I think it's important to do this respectfully. Often when we're stressed, we maybe flap at someone. We maybe don't take the time to maybe do a bit of small talk first or make someone feel comfortable because we don't have the energy to do that. And this might be for personal stress reasons, for other reasons. But it is still important to try to be respectfully with another. And if you cannot, then go back and apologize and say, look, I was so stressed. I'm sorry. I should have not talked to you like this. And I think one of the most powerful tools is to be present with the person and the situation at hand. Really try and be there. The next problem will come, but it will be after this. And remember that your colleagues are also humans. They're people with stressors, with their own lives, with a lot of different background around what is going on at work. And sometimes connecting means to just ask, hey, how are you today? I see you're a bit stressed. You want to have a quick chat about it. And then the stress is released and people feel maybe better to share and then can leave that stress behind and go back to their work. There are many more things you can do, and you can maybe think of examples yourself. When we look at the role of leadership, it is really pointing out things that are maybe in the way of building psychological safety. So if someone has a conflict, bring it out, sit the people down, find a solution, take responsibility and leadership in resolving a problem. Pay attention. Take time to interact, especially in difficult situations. Be present. Yeah, create opportunities for people to connect. May that be in work or out with work. Think of breaks during team meetings, common lunches, coffee breaks, whatever you can think of, but keeping this connection with each other to build the trust. And something I feel that when I look at leaders that really stands out is if someone is really authentic and is showing that I'm also doing mistakes. I'm not perfect. I've learned from this because I had to do all of these mistakes. And that's someone we look up to usually. To take time to get feedback, acknowledge people's work, praise them for what they've done well, and offer help. Be supportive when you can. So what have we learned today? Psychological safety is a requisite for success. Without that, we cannot develop, we cannot learn, we cannot look for new solutions to problems. We cannot grow, we cannot sustain a functioning business. It's important to address issues and concerns. And psychological safety makes it possible for us to do this in a safe way. And focus on how you can contribute to a psychologically safe environment in your work. What can you do? We have some references here for you that you will get sent with the presentation. And now I believe there is time for questions and comments.
Thank you, Mareke. Really insightful summary on the topic of psychological safety. One question about this is, that if there is an unsafe situation inside the workplace, let's say the supervisor is like being overly negative and pessimistic and not including everyone in this situation. So could you share any ideas on how to progress in this like wrongfully inflamed situation where the manager in question is like being the problem at the hand?
Yes. It's important that you not just work with your manager. You notice there are other people also in the company that are supposed to support you in your well-being. So you might want to address it with someone else that you can trust. There may be an actual person who is set up to be the trusted advisor for everyone. It may be HR. Find someone you can trust to talk about this, and then you don't have to actually come up with a solution yourself, but you can think of further steps to take with that person you feel safe with.
Yes. And we also have a very useful comment from one of the listeners stating that it's also important to investigate what has led to the psychologically unsafe situation. So it's important to react and find the root cause.
Absolutely.
That was all the questions that we actually had for this time. So very much thank you, Mareke, for this presentation. Thank you for everyone who is attending and listening to this. We will be sending a recording of the webinar to everyone who registered as a listener, and you can also find this from our Auntie website. Should there have been anyone online who doesn't know about Auntie, just a reminder that Auntie offers psychologically safe discussion support for everyone, and we want to help the individual in question to solve those everyday issues before they become too big and cause even bigger problems. But with that being said, thank you for attending. Thank you for your comments, and we will be back with another Auntie open webinar later on during springtime. Thank you, Mareke, and bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.